Alrighty. And so here we go. I'm going to start us off lying down with our legs out in front. And actually, before you do that, take a look at your feet. I'm just going to back it up here. Take a look at your feet with them stretched out in front, and notice how the ankles slope towards the pinkies, so that the pinkies are moving forward first, the big toes are pulling towards you, and then redirect that. So engage the lateral muscles of the ankles so that the inner heels are moving forward, and that's going to pull the pinky edge of the foot back. And you're going to start to feel the engagement of the peroneal muscles, little tibialis anterior, and then you'll start to feel that climb up the legs. And now take that a little step deeper. And as you're pulling the pinky toes towards you, as if you're standing on the floor, start to pull your tummy in and up. And now we're starting to get this sense that from the feet, right, going into a standing neutral position, we're activating the inner thighs, the hamstrings are engaging and pressing the thigh bones towards the floor, right? We're starting to feel that connection that the muscles of the feet and ankle have with the whole body. So now you're using feet, ankle, lower leg, upper leg, lower belly. 2 more. That last one, now hold it here. And it might be a lot of work just to hold this position. That's okay. And now so nice and tall, ribs in, jaw back, almost like you're pressing your back body against a wall, right? And now if you have longer legs, and this is really hard to do because you're rounding, right? That's okay. Elevate your seat here. Right? Take a cushion, or you can bend your knees and still do that, right? So I don't want to say that this feels good for everyone when some people feel really crappy with it. Good. Hold. And now from here, I'm going to reach my arms forward. I'm going to lower, scooping my belly lower, halfway, hold. Balls of the feet. Point the balls of the feet, not the toes, just the balls of the feet. The toes are still flexing towards you. Good. And then lower yourself all the way down. Stretch your arms back behind you. Ribs stay in. Balls of feet are still pressing forward like a Barbie toe. Inhale. Reach your arms up. Reach your arms up like you're swimming through water, right? So you're reaching up and you're pulling yourself forward. And I'm just going to take a forward fold. And again, if coming up is really hard or you're having a hard time, hands behind the thighs, right? That's okay. Beth, you've been doing really well with your roll-ups, so I'm trusting that this feels all right. But again, if it doesn't, what do? You bend the knees and take your hands. But first things first, press your hands like you're swimming, right? There's like this delay. If you need help, you come up, right? If you need the knees bent, you come up with the knees bent. If you can, right, you keep it all long, right? And again, reaching back, big breath in, connect your ribs to the floor, maintain that stretch with the inhale, keep the length, exhale, folding forward. And one more time. Right, nice and easy. And then again, it's not like you're pulling straps, right? You're just swimming. And folding, good. And then from here, pardon, let's take our left ankle and cross it over the right thigh. I always like it where the lateral malleolus, the sticky outy bone, presses into the center of my quadricep. So it's quite impactful. And you're going to start to release that muscle. And I'm just going to twist to my left side. As I exhale, I'm going to twist the other side. One more time, I inhale. So I'm inhaling to rotate, and then exhaling to rotate, counter rotate. Good. And then I bring that foot, I'm gonna bring it down. I'm gonna hug into that knee and lift myself up. My other leg is extended out in front of me, right? Same deal. And I'm holding up. So again, this time, if you need to have it this way, that's okay. Right? But if you can, that foot's on the floor, the knees hugged into the armpit, right? And you're using that. And what I want you to do I want you to settle that hip flexor. So if the hip flexor is getting kind of grippy, right? Sometimes it's want to do that, right? Open the thigh, make little movements, right? Settle the sits bones. Try and work the hip flexor muscles and those tendons. Try to work them down. And then with a nice, deep, relaxing sigh, just hug the knee back in. And it might take a couple of times. When I first started doing this in yoga, it was a mess. It felt horrible, right? But then eventually, like once I got out of my head about it and wasn't so aggro, it felt really nice to have that hip compression. But it takes a while sometimes, especially if you're quite tight, right? If you're skiing or biking, that gets a little, those muscles are always on the forefront. And even if you have to do this repeatedly, you can't just hold, that's okay. One more. Good. And then try and stay and relax. Like even if it's getting a little bit poppy, right? Just try to relax. See if you can do it with your mind. If you're feeling nothing, then fantastic, right? We're loading up that hip. One more breath. Good. And now from here, my right foot, right? I'm going to point through the ball of the foot. Look at your toes. Every toe is in alignment. Your pinky toe isn't further forward than your big toe. And I'm going to hold that knee. Same thing. I'm reaching. My right ball of foot is reaching forward. I'm holding that knee, right? I'm pulling my belly in. I want to do this as gracefully as I can. We'll see how that goes. Oh, right there. So I'm at the middle of my ribs. And here I am. I'm going to extend that leg. And bend. 2 more times. Extend. I'm keeping my head, neck, and shoulders up. There's a little bit of abdominal control here. Last one. And bend and hold. Grab hold of the foot. You can. If you can't, grab your ankle. Hold here. Bring yourself up a little higher. Hold for 3. For 2. Pull the knee in, pull the nose in for 1. Now here's where we see how strong we are. We can either stay here. That's really hard for me, so I'm not going to do that. Or we come back and we start to try to bring ourselves up back into that position. Now here's the fun. Hug that knee in and see if you got a little more mobility. I immediately noticed quite a difference. Again, that's me. Maybe, you felt something good, bad, or not so much. One more breath. Just give it that extra hug. Reinforce the fact that you got this new hip mobility, and then release. Now take a look at your feet. My leg always feels longer. I don't know if it really is longer, but we'll go with that. So next thing, I'm going to take my right leg, cross it over. Again, I'm looking for that point where the ankle bone presses into, not so politely, into my quadricep, right? Because that's a big muscle and it gets tight and sticky. So any kind of deportment or acupressure is going to help. That's a big meridian, stomach meridian. And so from here, I'm going to turn, rotate. I'm going to inhale. Good. I'm going to counter rotate and exhale. And one more time. Inhale, rotate. And exhale. Counter rotate. Good. Then I'm going to bring my leg in. I'm going to take my foot down. And I'm going to pull it in. And let's see, how's this? Each leg is different, right? They don't connect to each other. So never assume the same for either. They live in the same neighborhood, right? Pelvic row, but they don't connect. So, and as sometimes this is like the harder hip for me. This is definitely the hip that I feel like if I'm going to get a replacement, this will be the one. Who am I kidding? I'm a fitness teacher. There's going to be some artificiality in my body at some point. Okay. But today, this is giving me a little bit of a hiccup. So if you can see, for me, this is about where I can go into adduction without a flare up in my hip. So I'm actually going to take my sits bone back, which puts me forward. and then see if that doesn't give me any extra relief. A little. And so what am I going to do? I'm going to take my advice. I'm going to come forward and back, or forward and back, out and in, right? Out and in. And let's follow this down the rabbit hole. So my hips tight, and then where does that tightness go? Now I start to feel it in my medial knee. So what I'm going to do is hold on to that junction of muscle. And now I'm pressing my thumb into where one is coming in across the thigh and the other one's coming up across the tibia, right? And I'm pulling in. And now, I don't know if you guys can see it, but before, this is where I could go without feeling something. But when I interrupt that signal, now I can come up and bring it a little deeper, right? A little deeper in towards my midline. And this is all just, you know, basic stuff when you do sports massages, finding how those muscles interact with each other. So 2 more times, and maybe you're feeling it somewhere else. And as long as if you're feeling a hot spot down through the front of the leg, that's okay, right? Go and palpate where you're feeling it, and you'll notice you will get more range of motion. And the last one, we're gonna hold. Here we go. So now I'm gonna point the ball, not the toes, right? The toes are flexed towards me, point through the ball of the foot evenly. So look at the left leg. Make sure that every toe is in the same plane. And then here we go. Best descent ever. So I'm using the ball of my left leg, right? That's like I'm lowering myself down, and that ball of the foot is what's holding on, right? And so I'm going to really identify with that. This side is not as graceful. Oh, maybe. There we go. So there's that one moment you're like, ooh. And then from here, I'm going to hold, right? I'm still lifted. I'm going to extend my leg. Reach, I'm reaching. I want to feel that length, that line, right? That World War II nylons line down the back of the leg of the pantyhose. And bend. And now I'm going to try and take my hands around my foot. That's going to bring me closer to my knee. I'm not here. My leg isn't bisecting me. I'm here right out of my knee. So my shin is exactly parallel. It's not on a course, on a diagonal. Hold for 3. For 2, try and bring your nose and your knee closer. For 1. All right, here we go. Hands back on the shin. And moment of truth. Inhale. And then I'm going to press the shin and the hands together to come up. Ha, 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 ha. Off, and hallelujah. I have that flexion in this leg. And I'm not feeling tightness. So, right, I want to sit nice and tall and just kind of reinforce that, right? We call it imprinting in Pilates. We're giving the brain time to congeal on the new shape that we have. Good. And then we're going to release ourselves. So we're going to start with our Pilates warm-up, the 5 essential Pilates ab movements. But I wanted to give our hips, especially that flexion, because a lot of the Pilates movements from the warm-up isn't hip flexion, right? So in order to appease the hip flexors, give them a little gooiness first, I think, right? So, especially first thing in the morning, especially when it's rainy. So here we go. We're going to start with, we'll start with our pelvic tilts. So, and it's kind of, I like going back to the basics because I think, you know, it's, for me, I just go deeper into my practice, whether it's yoga, whether it's cycle classes, whether it's, you know, basic muscle movements. And with Pilates, it's almost like there's so much to unpack and unwrap. It's like a never-ending holiday, like the Christmas stocking that just never ends. And so taking it back to the fundamentals really gives you, the more and more you practice, gives you more and more of an opportunity to identify something new or experience something new or have something gel. So close your eyes if that's you know, comfortable, and have your hands on your hip points. And I want you, with your eyes closed, your hands on your hip points, to feel the muscles responsible for tucking and tilting your pelvis. So remember, the tuck, right? We're tucking our pelvis. So the sits bones lift up, right? Kind of like in the Back to the Future car, right? We turn it on and the headlights, right? The flaps that cover the headlights lift up, right? So think of that, right? It's very controlled, right? And then think of the muscles that lower the hips or lower the sits bones down and lift the pelvis. Maybe the low back starts to ebb away from the floor. Now, I want to feel into what my head is doing. Notice how I nod my head towards the towards the sternum as I go into that tilt where my sits bones are down. And then as I lift my sits bones and lower my pelvis back to the floor, I get a release through the front of my neck, and the occipital ridge starts to press more predominantly right back of my head. So just play with that. Now feel how the pelvis is pulling and reaching. And now start to grow that experience, right? And you're moving so slowly, so minutely, right? That the pelvis is allowing this opening across either the front or back of the spine. And now relax your face, right? Like Shavasana face, like expressionless. And now start to feel what's happening in the cavities of the head. When I go into a tilt, there's a sense of congestion. And then when I go into the tuck and my chin lifts and the brow lifts, the orbital ridge moves back, there's an opening. So let's pair this with our exhale and inhale. As we exhale, tilt the pelvis. And as we inhale, tuck the pelvis. And that's different than what we usually do, right? We're usually taught that the contraction is where we exhale, right, to get the most bang for our abdominal buck. And then on the inhale is when we release. But notice that exhale as you tilt. And now as you tilt and exhale, you're going to feel these deep abdominal muscles, right? And it's going to inhibit how much you can tilt your pelvis. And as you inhale and tuck, it's going to inhibit how much you're able to tuck, hopefully. And it should be a pleasurable, and I don't like to use the word should, but I'm going to, it should be a pleasurable experience. So now, as we're doing this meta workout, I want you to find the place in between, so neutral pelvis, right? And now, I want you to pull the tummy down, wrap the ribs in, and feel really contained. And I like to palpate around my abdominal wall, especially my lower abdominals, right, with the lower belly, and make sure that that's really turned off, right, that it's not just kind of goopy, or it's not my hip flexors, right? We did all that lovely work to release our hip flexors from this. And now take your hands behind your head. Make a nice little hammock. Maybe take your head side to side. Sometimes it's nice to do that just to make sure your head's really relaxed, like a massage therapist is just giving you some spinal traction. And then release. Now press your feet straight down to the floor so that your hamstrings and inner thighs engage. That's like an anchor for your pelvis. Keep the footing that way, and it's going to help inhibit your pelvic ability or your pelvic mobility. Inhale. Feel the back body broaden. As you exhale, lift up and imagine you're trying to make a circle. Like you're trying to close the circle so that the forehead would come onto the top of the knees. And then release. Open up the elbows. Exhale, elbows move into the peripheral gaze. Good. Inhale, lengthen. And when I'm saying make the circle, you guys keep going. I'm just going to explain it further. That first exercise we did in the morning, at the start of class, right? We went down and we stretched back. And I said, like you're pressing waves, right? Like you're swimming in the ocean. And then we went into a fold, right? So we started with opening the front and back body. Here, your legs are bent. But I still want to imagine that at the end of this, like if I was so flexible, so pliable, so strong, that my exhale would be like my knees towards my nose, right? Obviously, I don't expect anyone to be able to do that, right? Because that would also mean you're moving your pelvis. But that's kind of like that arc, right? You come up and over. But slow, not like in gym class. Let's go one more. And these are hard, right? They're hard. It's hard to not move. And now from here, we're going to start with chest lift with rotation. So we come up, right? We're going to hold our chest lift. And then from my waist, my hips are going to stay exactly as they are. My elbows are not going to move in or out. I'm going to rotate to the left. Inhale. Exhale back to center. I'm going to rotate to the right. Pause for an inhale. Exhale back to center. Rotate to the left. Breathe in. Bring it back, exhale. Rotate to the right. Breathe in. Bring it back to center. And pardon me, as you're doing this, notice how your hips and your feet feel on the floor, right? Your head is relaxed. So as I move back and forth, I notice that when I move to my right side, I have less mobility or less stability. Like I feel like my hips do a little more shifting than when I rotate to my left. So in order to conquer that, or not conquer, but just kind of explore, I'm going to rotate to my left, breathe, know how I feel, and then I'm going to move so slowly, like a sunset. And then right there, I can feel where it starts to get a little shifty, and I can course correct. And you probably can't see, but I'm quivering. So do that one more time. Go to your stronger side, right? Pause, breathe. And now hold on, maintain the feeling you have in your abdomen, in your feet, right? The placement of your knees as you rotate or derotate to center. And then slowly, right? Because then, in order for you to not get all wonky, you really catch the muscles in the moment. And then you're going to feel that things get a little shaky, things get a little tenuous, a little touchy. Good. Do that one more time and close your eyes. And I'm a big proponent of closing one's eyes because the optic nerve is really busy in the back of the brain. And so when you turn the optic nerve off, you're allowing more of your receptors to like experience this in a more, say the word like psychedelic kind of way, but not in like a 60s Grateful Dead way, more in tune with your body, eating mushrooms and then staring at your hand for an hour. Good. And then release and take a break. It's a lot to be up in that position. So take a break. Let your knees go side to side. Maybe butterfly your legs and get the inner thighs and the hip flexors to open. Good. And so I know it's taking us days to get through these 5 exercises, but it'll be worth it, hopefully. So we did our chest lift with rotation. Now we're going to go into our single knee stretch. So similarly, I'm going to pull we started with the left knee when we did our release work. So I'm going to start with my left leg here. And I'm going to turn myself this way so you can see. I'm always so phlegmy in the morning because I drink, and then this one is more particular because yesterday I got a cold. I thought I was getting a cold brew, but I got it with some like heavy cream in it. And now it's just like really, not that you need to know that, but just I'm going to apologize in advance for continually clearing my throat. So let's talk about it. Hug your right knee or your left knee into your chest. Now lift your head, neck, and shoulders. Look at that right leg. Notice how it's doing the same thing we talked about the first time we discussed in class. Pinky's here, right? There's a little external rotation most likely. Clear that up, right? So rotate or take the lateral muscles of the leg and engage them. So now you've got a really strong leg. pinky toes pulling, big toe ball joint is pressing. And now you probably also got a little bit longer in your side body, so enjoy that length. Now release your head down again, shoulder blades together. Yeah. And inhale, feel the back body get long. Feel it's like you're inflating a life vest. And then you're going to keep that length. Press your shin into your hand so that your ankle comes in line with your knee. Ankle to knee. None of this, right? One straight line like an arrow. And then from here, I'm going to bring my nose. I'm going to lift my right leg in line with my left. And I'm going to switch. And switch. And there's so much activity in my legs. I'm pressing. Imagine you're on the stair climber, right? And now the stair is changing. You're going up and up and up. And now let's talk about what happens in our joints. So I was telling you how my right hip, it was hard for me to get that flexion, right? Do you remember? Now, how I'm seeing it manifest in this abdominal exercise is that knee tracks outward of my midline. So I'll show you. Let's see if you can see it this way, right? So here we go, right? So there and there. And I don't know if you guys can catch it, but it's really hard for me to pull that knee. It wants to go out. It's just, and it's slight, but it's just kind of coming out as I begin to pull my thigh into my hip. So now again, let's think about it. And I know I have you guys doing this for a lot, but I'm trying to send a message. Right? So now remember how I said the hip is going to talk to a different muscle, right? As I press. Now for me, it was my inner knee. So I'm going to pull. As I pull my thigh in, I'm going to try to pull my fibula, that outer leg bone into my body. And it's so much work, right? Because there's a disconnect, right? So whatever you're fighting, right? Maybe for you, it's an ankle. Play with it. Where in your body can you control? Let's go one more time. Good. And then hug, stop with your opposite knee. So our right knee pulls into the chest. Look at your left leg, reach it long, just like we did with the right. Press your shin up, hold, and release. Oh. All right, stretch long, stretch your arms out. Oh my gosh, we're finally ending. So, double knee stretch. All right, I'm gonna slide. So let's talk about this. Legs are long. You've got nice, strong legs. From your low belly, hands on your low belly. Not from your hip flexors, from here. Pull like you're sucking like a milkshake through a straw. Pull your legs from here. Okay, release it. Let's try it again. So I'm not here, from here. Okay, two little mouths, one big chocolate milkshake, and I'm gonna dig the heels in. My knees are gonna get buoyant, right? So, and now from there, and pulling in, ha, feet are down. Good. Inhale. I'm going to start with my chest lift. And then I'm going to watch your knees or watch your ankles. All's like clockwork. Here. I'm going to bring my legs together. Actually, you know what? No. I'm not going to bring my legs together because I'm going to work on that, on my true neutrality. So again, I want to look at my legs. For me, I'm going to pay attention to my wonky side. You find yours. Make sure you don't see your heels. And I'm going to lift up. I'm going to reach arms and legs and bring it back. Reach arms and legs and bring it back. Truth be told, when I have a point through my knee or through my feet, It makes it easier for my knee to track elsewhere. For me, flexing my feet like I'm on a squat machine, like the squat press where you lie down, right? And you're pressing up and pulling in. For me, that works best to keep the neutrality of my legs. So play with that, right? So again, right? Everybody's different. Thank goodness. How boring would life be? And there's so much to work out, right? Think of the Kardashians must be the most boring people in the world. Right? There's nothing there. I don't know, maybe Kanye keeps things interesting. But I'd much rather have dinner or cocktails with someone who's had a little more life experience, right? Where they had to figure things out and not have everything handed. Similarly, when I, go to yoga classes and the teachers never really struggled, right? They're just very bendy or very naturally yogic. And it's kind of frustrating because they can't teach to me, right? That sounded very pompous. I didn't mean it that way. And let's go one more. And I got a lot of snap, crackle, and popping in my joint. Hold here. Now here's the fun. Here's the fun. Press your shins into your hands so much that your elbows fully extend. And then exhale. Nicely done. Good. And then so we got our 5 out, right? We got our pelvic tilt. So we did our chest lift. And finally now we're done with our 5. Let's go ahead and take some rotation. That always feels nice. I like doing those, especially when you're working with the joints in question, because like I was saying, I was getting a lot of snap, crackle, and pops in my knees as I was forcing, not forcing, but really working the, what's the word? The alignment. So we're gonna come onto hands and knees now. And I wanna just like stick my butt up in the air and open my pelvic floor. And I'm doing that so that I can, and also take a look at your heels. I noticed I did that. My heels are turning in. Work the alignment. Press the tops of the feet down so that the pinky and the big toe are on the floor together, right? So all 5 toenails are on the floor as best as you can. Some people have a really hard time with this. And I'm sticking my butt up in the air because it's allowing my thighs to insert into the back of my hips. And that's really good for the thighs because all that tightness in the front of the hips is because we're pushing that way, right? So we're resetting. And now from here, you can always have your fists down, or if it's okay, if it's all right for your back, you can have your forearms down, but I really like to have my hands down because I think it's just easier. I'm gonna lift my thighs into my hips and release. And I'm just lifting my thighs into my hips and release. So my knees are lifting, right? And I want to feel this in my lower belly. My arms stay standing so that your arms are like pillars. There's nothing happening in the neck. There's nothing happening in the wrist. There's nothing happening in the elbow, right? My arms are pillars, much like if you have a house or a pillar in your building, in your apartment, right? So we're working with the density of the bones, right? Dense tissue with the arms. 2 more. You'll start to feel this in the inner thigh, so extra bonus there. Last one. Good. And then press back into your rest position. And again, hopefully that child's pose, as we call it in yoga, feels really compact and nice. Right? Because the whole aim of this is to quiet the hip flexors and get a little more nourishment across the pelvis, which then, of course, leads itself to nourishment across the rest of the body, right? The pelvis is the United Nations of the body. If it's happening in the pelvis, it will be represented and felt throughout the entire body as a whole. And I'll come onto our side. And we're starting with our left side. So left leg on top. So there's many ways in which you can do this. You can be upright. As long as your shoulder is clear, I'm fine with this. You can always be here. That's going to inhibit your ability. So I would maybe not, unless you're like a constant Pilates, you like this. I personally like the tried and true of being here, right? And I always have a waist and my shoulders always shrug down. So pick your position, right? And maybe play with it and be like, you know what, this is actually a little nicer for me today being upright. Especially if you got sinus issues, it's raining, it's kind of gross. This can help. But again, pick your passion. Waist is here. Now remember your butt, right? So stick your butt out so the thighs can move into the back of the hip. And I have my legs forward. And I'm pressing this leg gently down. But I'm pulling that thigh in. So the bottom leg is working. It's not passive. Even though I have my butt slightly sticked out, and that's honestly, it's not even, I wouldn't even say that it's stuck out. It's more that so many people tuck and they get lazy. And then where's the focus going to go? Exactly where we've been trying to release it, right in the front of the hip. So in order to keep that, and also look at your knees, right? If that top knee is shorter than your bottom knee, tells me that you're probably tucking your tail, right? So you stick your butt out and you push your knee forward. How's that happening? I'm pulling my thigh into my hip. Why is my knee going forward? Because it's all connected, right? That means that my obliques are turned on, my hips are, my lateral rotators are turned on, my glute medius are turned on, right? But when you tuck, you're not pulling the thigh, you're actually pushing the thigh forward. You're just pulling the rest of the body, and that's creating this kind of like a slinky, right? I don't know if that was very articulate, but take your hands to your ribs, right? Make sure that the ribs aren't expanding. They're pulling in, but they're not pulling in at the cost of tucking your tail. Let's go 2 more. And when you do everything right, it's really hard. Hold here. Now, here's my knee. Now look at my ankle. I'm going to lift. So now my ankle is in line with my knee. And that's all I'm doing. And if it helps you to hold your knee in space, do it, right? So that you're feeling those muscles. It's going to be a lot on that lower leg. And this is so good because creating strength across the ankle and the lower leg, that's not the gastric or soleus, is important, right? You think that your knee just needs the support of the quads. So many of my clients that I see, their issues are in their ankle. And so many of my clients that I see who have like knee issues and their knee starts to turn in or turn out, I immediately look at the way that their foot lands on the floor, whether they're walking upstairs or whether they're walking across the floor, if they're like running to catch a bus, right? And you'll see it. Because if both feet strike evenly, that means that the next joint above is going to land with the same capability. But if one foot lands like this and then the other knee goes that way, right? So start with that. Start to feel it. And if it's starting to burn, that's really good. So let's do 2 more. Last one. Good. And then release, roll onto your back. Onto your back. Now from here, I'm going to take my legs, my knees come into my chest. If you need to do a little release, by all means do it. Reach my legs up to the ceiling. And that same leg, I'm going to take it out and squeeze it in. So again, I'm doing my best to keep my right leg reaching straight up. And that's going to work your quadricep. It's going to work both your hamstring and your quadricep to keep that extension of the knee. And my left leg, and remember how I said we're working against water? Right? Imagine you're in a big pool and you're in, it's aqua aerobics class. Right? If it feels grippy in the hip flexor, drop that hip down, right? Drop it down. And exhale. And as you bring it up, pull your tummy into your back body. And think of this thigh. Let's go 1 more. Good. And bend. Take your pillow. Right, I'm just gonna take my hoodie because it's where I can reach it and I'm being lazy. So I'm gonna take it in between my knees. Gotta get the inner thighs for Beth. And so let's talk about it before I do anything. Feet are on the floor of, and then notice, take your hands to your hip, to your front of your pelvis, and squeeze the pillow or your ball or whatever, your sweatshirt. And I don't want to squeeze and feel like anything's moving forward, right? I want to squeeze and feel like my thighs are pulling back. I'm getting more space in the front of my pelvis and more of my posterior femoral glide through the hips, right? Through that lovely cavity. Good. And now hold that, press your feet down, lift your hips without tucking. So I'm not tucking my pelvis and squeezing my butt, right? I've relaxed and I lower and I lift, right? And I lower. I love this. I love this so much more than, and there's always a place for it, right? And I do it myself, like the Jane Fonda, right? When you squeeze up, or like in the yogic movements where you really push everything to the surface. But even though I don't get the same range of motion in these Pilates bridges, right, where you just lift and you have that sinking in of the thighs. And I can feel that my thighs are really in the back of my hips because now my gluteal muscles are having to engage in a really thoughtful and deep way, right? It's like reading something that's got texture, right? It's not Sweet Valley High books, right? All right. And I love Grisham. And don't get me wrong, there is a beach and a time for a Grisham novel. But when I go into my yoga bridge, it's kind of like bum bum bum, the firm, right? Or pelican brief, right? There's no nuance. It's just like, now I'm working, now I'm not working. And here, right, there's all this like subtle prose. I'm constantly in a place of having to figure out, where are my bones? How do they sit in my joints? What muscles are working? What muscles are not? Am I relaxed, or am I holding any accessory tension, right? 2 more. Good. Last one. Oh. All right. Let's keep this, unless it's aggravating you, let's keep this thing that's in between the knees. And we're just going to do small rotation. So nothing crazy. Arms come out to a T. I'm going to rotate to the right. Check to make sure that my knees are in place, right? Back to center. And it's small. I don't want you to go too far, because I want both shoulders on the floor. This is more about mobility. Right? We'll do that one more time. So slow. And I'm not moving very far. You can see I'm not going very far, but I'm not letting the movement dictate my experience. I'm letting the experience dictate my movement. Ooh, that sounded really profound. Let's go one more. Right, once you're even, you're gonna bring it back to center. Remove your object, release, and then give yourself a little bit of some me time, right? And then from there, we're gonna bring ourselves to our other side. So I'm just gonna switch so that I'm not giving you my backside. And I'm gonna be on my side. So again, right, whatever you chose, whether it was here, which is fine. If you're gonna be here, just remember, right, you gotta be really clear that, because you're positioning your thigh a little more internally, right? So if you chose here, I don't think anyone did, just be aware, right? If you're here, that's fine. Just make sure that you're not dumping into your shoulder, right? Because then that's not Pilates. If you're here, right, the shoulder, in order to get the waist to lift up, shrug that shoulder down, because that lat engagement is going to bring you into your obliques. And then here we are. Stick your butt out so you feel the thigh pull back, but that your knee is in line with your left knee, your bottom knee. And just left and lower. And I have, a lot of teachers will teach this like with the heels, and there's variations. I'm not saying, I teach it as well. I'm not saying like it's inferior or superior. I'm saying today, because I want to work on the strengthening, right? The peroneal muscles that can tend to get weak. Do you ever see like knock-kneed people, right? There's like, if you ever look at people's bones or like how they walk, or look at their hips, look at the waistline of their pants, look at their shoulders, look at the architecture. And then it's a fun little puzzle, if you're so inclined, to try and figure out what muscle is short and pulling and what muscle is weak. And that's not to say that short muscles are strong. You can have a short and weak muscle, but let's just play with what, like a puppeteer, right? Which strings are too long and which strings are too short. That's creating that architecture. Because at the end of the day, a bone will take a shape to the tendon's trajectory. So if you really wanted to change your bones and you didn't mind spending 365 days working on that bone, positioning that bone, right? Without, I mean, obviously, like there's exceptions to the rule, right? If you spent like your whole life, that was your one thing, your whole life, you would have a different body, right? So thinking about it in that construct, I think it's fun, or at least it makes for good people watching. I've got about 4 more. I'm just talking to you guys now so that you're not thinking about the myriad emotions your hip is giving you. We're gonna hold this next one up. Remember, check in with your waistline, check in with your body. And now from here, ooh, and I heard that right now. So remember, this is the leg that gave me so many opportunities. So I'm gonna see this as I lift my ankle in line with my knee and lower down. And it's hard to control. Like, it's giving me quite a run for my money. And for this one, so let's talk about it. For the other one, on my healthier, I don't want to say healthier, but on the leg I could control, I felt it a lot more in these muscles, right? But here, I'm feeling it like in this area, right? So it's a lot more of a, for me, and it's very telling, right? Oops, right, where am I? I'm here. For me, it's very telling, is this muscle is so strong by my groin that this muscle really needs the work. So identify, how does this feel for you versus your other one, your other side? 2 more. Last one. Good. And then roll onto your back. Ah, well, let's stretch out for a minute if you need to. And then here we go. Legs up, 90 degrees. Do your best. And again, if you have tight hamstrings, that's okay, right? You're doing your best. But again, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be tucking my tail. I'm here. I'm in my neutral position. My legs are strong. So I'm using all of the leg, right? The muscles are constricting all around. And I take that right leg out. Squeeze. And this one is my wonky one, right? So what do? I gotta be really focused, right? Really zen. Because if I get distracted, I'm not gonna notice that my strong hip is slightly lifting. Right here, it's like I'm starting to sweat. Because the more I take it out, the more I have to really focus on wrapping my ribs oppositionally of that abducting leg. And because there's that propensity for that hip flexor to want to over, I really got to think of pulling, right? Retracting the thigh into my hip. One more. I said we were going to use the roller today, but I'm already keeping us over. I got lost in in my world. Last one. Good. Bend your knees. Place your feet on the floor. And now I'm going to do some, and we're going to start to end. Actually, no, before we do that, I want to do that rotation again. So this time, without the, if you want the blanket or the pillow or the sweatshirt in between your knees, go ahead. What I'm going to try to do is keep the same distance between, so I'll show you this way. We keep this distance, right? So if we can see, and I really try to maintain that. And remember, it's not how far I go. I'm gonna try and keep that, right? Like it's just this inanimate object, right? Like when you go and you move a chair or you move a stool out of your way, or you pick up the remote control or the phone, right? I'm controlling the lower half of my body. The lower half of my body is as inanimate as the lamp in my living room. The lamp in my living room isn't going to go all willy-nilly unless I put it into a bizarre position, right? So here we go. Last one, make sure you're even. Down. Now you can go willy-nilly. Right? Ooh. Stretch in a way that feels good. Oh. And here, so we're gonna end with our, so remember how we did the pelvic tilts? And I was, it was very slow and like thoughtful, which is great. And we talked about how the head moves with the pelvis because the pelvis is pretty much the manipulator of the entire body. Now I want to go a little deeper. So I'm going to lift my hips and stretch my arms. I'm going to lower my arms, lower my hips, and nod my chin to my chest. It's extending the back of the spine, or the back of my neck. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Oh, and it's so nice, right? You're palpating. Basically, you're lengthening and you're moving through your brainstem, which means you're moving through the entire nervous system, right? You're moving your spine. And I'm not doing this in a way that's crunching me, right? I'm doing it in a way that's creating length. Like I have the slinky stretched all the way out. And now I'm just kind of like bloop, 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 like blooping around. So I'm never tucking, right? I don't want any of this to feel, I'm not jamming my chin into my chest, right? I'm letting the back of my head pull back. And so just like I'm getting a massage, right? Or getting my hair done, the neck is passively flexing the chin towards the chest. But I'm not doing it at the cost. Like I'm trying to pull my pelvis and my head into opposing directions. One more. And then release spine neutrality. Let your knees go side to side. Right? And let your knees go side to side. We didn't do a lot of rotation today. So let the knees go side to side. Let that the thigh moving to the right side, the left thigh. Gently pulls on the left lung tissue, the left breast tissue, the left pectoralis into your deltoid and switch. Switch. You might even feel stretch through the facial muscles. One more time, either side. And then extend your legs. We're going to end the way we started. So, right, if you need to check in, take a look at your feet, right? Reposition your feet, right? So that it's like you're standing on them. So the thighs are working. Arms outstretched, the shoulders are down. Inhale. Arms pressed like you're swimming. And fold. Inhale. And expand. And it feels so different. For me, it feels so much more different. And it doesn't feel like there's any tight spots. Maybe for you, it feels just the same. It feels worse. Who knows? Okay. Just notice what you noticed. Last one. Getting yourself up and give yourself a big high five. Good work.